Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming.
You look cold, boys.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming. Winter is coming.
That's cold. Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
Oh, that's all right, I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
Well, guess what? Winter is here, and you know who that is. That is Russ Winter, and he is the curator. He's the main guy. Curator just sounds so pretentious. I hate to say it. But he's the main guy behind winterwatch.net, and which produces in-depth quality content about the world's situation. And just for a sec. And yeah, so he's here once a month, first Friday of every month. And we had to push off a bit on last Friday. But if we're going to have Russ on a Friday, this is the Friday to have him on because there's so much happening in the world. And we're going to get into it. But before we do, I just want to bring up the sponsor of the show, the one and only TrueHempScience.com. And let me tell you, in a world where things are getting more and more tense, you need all the tools in your toolkit to be able to navigate the world that we're living in. So let me just see if I can bring this up here. I don't often go to Chris's website, but I'm going to do that right now. And the only problem is I always have to burn the first one. Stop sharing. Yes. And we got to come back. And we'll come back again. One more time. And bring it back up here. There we go. And yeah, so this is Chris's website. Wouldn't you like that to be you right now? And yeah, these are all great visuals that do symbolize the effects of CBD and all the various forms of it. So again, here you go. This is a real nice breakdown of how it all works. Boom, right there. Look at that. Chris has been wise enough to be able to give you kind of a comprehensive guide here. So all you got to do, go to the website, check out the information on the website, and you spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you will get a goodie bag with your order. And $150 and more gets you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. These are the stars of Chris's product line. So inquire about the gummies, especially some of the gummies that help you sleep at night, right? So Twilight would be a good one to ask about. TrueHempScience.com, your one-stop shop for all things CBD. All right, without any further delay, let's bring him on. The man. What's up, Russ?
I sent you a good meme to start the show off. The last thing I sent on DM.
Okay, let's check it out.
It's a good way to kind of start the atmosphere we're in today. And it kind of describes the condition of the markets, because I'm noticing the markets overnight were down really sharply, and then they kind of worm their way back, and it's going to be a down day. It's going to be a red day, but not what you would expect. And I think it's because of this mentality of this particular meme that we're going to put up.
Okay, I'm just going to pull this.
The guy sitting at the poker table.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it off the screen here. I just want to put it up on the share. Okay, Russ, the floor is yours. Break it down.
No, nothing ever happens. All in. Now, it hasn't really been too bad of a bet in the markets or anything else in terms of what's swirling around us. An awful lot of people kind of making this bet, I believe. You can just kind of tell by the market actions. But I still think at some point in time they're going to get offside.
So, yes, this is true. This is something you brought up for a very long time, that the tariffs were going to crater the market or crater the economy. There are two different things.
Well, tariffs and a combination of other factors.
But to your point, there seems to be some kind of zombie like ability for these markets to keep themselves relevant, and there's a number of factors, I'm sure, some of which I'm sure you can break down, but they took a hit pretty early after all this went down, theoretically, which we'll get to with Israel and Iran. But have they bounced back in the meantime?
Well, since the last time we were on the show, there's been a pretty significant market rally. There's been every little dip gets bought, and so this attitude prevails. And there's another theme going around, is that it's called the taco theme. Have you ever heard that?
I'm familiar with it. They keep calling him Taco Trump. Why don't you lay it on people?
Yeah, Trump always chickens out.
Right.
So any type of measure, whether it's tariffs, he'll chicken out. It's usually called on Tuesday, or the mass, the mass rounding up the illegals en mass and deporting them. He seems to be chickening out on that.
Well, so I have a good friend who is he's a lawyer in California. He's pretty well connected. And he told me that this thing that happened in LA was very targeted, and it wasn't a mass thing. They were in the fashion district, and they had found a business there that was laundering a shit ton of money and was cartel / Mexico related. And that's why they were there. They wanted to basically take those people out and shut that business down.
So then it became political because it was LA and became a big turf fight. Okay.
Exactly. So it wasn't mass, but it was targeted. It was a targeted like ICE operation. And then a lot of this, revolves around the money piece. So I want to get into Claudia Sheinbaum later in the show, but the Trump administration had passed this 3% remittance thing on all money going to Mexico, and I had thought about this years ago. It's like back in the 90s. I'm sitting there, at a grocery store where you get your Western Union stuff. You can pay your electrical bill. I mean, these like the customer service, areas in these grocery stores do all these things. And I can't tell you how many times I would be behind somebody from Mexico who was sending money to somebody through the Western Union.
Yeah, that's how they've supported their families for years, decades.
Right, I get it, but it's like, well, why don't we just take 3% of that because it's leaving the country?
Yeah,
it's not coming back to us. I thought about that years ago, and so Trump finally did that. And he finally said,
I guess the question I would have is the money being sent back, was that earned in the United States, and was it taxed in some way, like any citizen would pay tax? That's the big question. That's pretty hard to quantify. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would assume, and it's not always fair to assume, that a fair amount of the people who are doing that are working under the table.
Right. Yep. I think that's probably correct.
Yeah, and so then it's like, well, come on. You're going to come here. You're going to make this money. You'll keep some, and you'll spend it for your daily needs or whatever. But a large portion of it is going back to Mexico, and this is happening all over. And the more people that come here and have come here, the more money is going back to Mexico. So it's actually, I think, like the money that comes from the United States in this sort of work sector area is like number 3 or 4 on Mexico's economic.
Is it just to Mexico? Is it just to Mexico or all these other countries?
Mexico,
specifically Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of money flows back to Central America.
Not as much as Mexico. Not as much. So Trump passed this remittance, 3% remittance tax on all money going to Mexico. And simultaneously, as this targeted raid on this fashion district in one specific place happens, they're ready to go and start protesting, because it's not just, hey, Reconquista, although I'm sure there's some of that. They were pissed. They were pissed that now, all of a sudden, there's going to be less money coming back to Mexico. So there's a lot going on here, some of which we know about, some of it we don't. Like, I just found out before the show from my friend. Again, he's a lawyer in California, pretty well connected, and he told me that's how it all started. And then how it's all ending now is them, or at least not ending, but sort of next stage is using that as like a launching pad for this greater No Kings thing. And that seems like it's been planned for a while, and we can talk more about that. But I would agree with you. This whole market stuff is crazy, and it's not always something that is, one-to-one.
There's just a lot of bets on policy being turned around. So if Trump will come up with this pretty large tariff and back down on it, and not really sign that many deals. He never really closes his so-called deals he keeps talking about. But the market is getting tipped off. And I just think there's so much corruption and insider trading going on with selected groups of people. I just think that's what the whole Trump administration is. And I was noticing that, like, even a major market guy that I kind of follow, what's his name, was saying exactly the same thing. He says the whole market is just rife with this insider.
Well, so, I mean, look, I agree. Like, maybe it's because Trump has surrounded himself with people like David Sachs and Jamie Dimon. I mean, these are, master money minds. And Trump has always loved money. And we also saw it in the Biden administration. Like, there was corruption there. And the people that seem to be enjoying more of the corruption in the Biden administration were people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and a lot of the
Biden administration seemed to be mostly about getting favors or getting access to the big man and kind of lobbying type stuff. But Trump has just seemed to be open insider trading, just tips, giving people tips.
Yeah.
Make an announcement on 9:00 on Tuesday morning. We're going to turn these tariffs around. And then you look at the market and you can just see people front running it even before the announcement even made. I've seen it so many times. This is what's happening. This is the main form of corruption under Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like this is, if you go back, do you know about the fourth turning at all? Do you know about the whole? Yeah. So the third turning, which they call, what is it, the phase of the nomad or something like that. It's sort of like the equivalent of seasonally the fall. And the third turning in America is right around where Reagan shows up. And if it's hold on if you look at that particular time, it's the beginning of the harvest, right? You have all these people starting to go in and really game the system. You have people like Ivan Boesky, Michael Milken, John McCain, that whole SNL thing, right? That's when it all starts. They start going in and they start carving up what's, on the carcass. And every presidency since then becomes a greater version of that because there's less left on the bone.
Right.
And so they have to manufacture.
So it's a scramble for whatever's left.
That's right. Absolutely. And it all starts with Reagan's. That coincides with this, the third part of the fourth turning. We're in the fourth turning now, actual phase.
So all the ships are sinking, but the people are still scrambling around for the leftovers.
Right. And they'll even manufacture the leftovers. The economy almost feels like a Soylent Green economy. Where are they deriving value from? You tell me, Russ.
Well, you've got we've talked about the AI potential, but we also talked about what's going to be necessary. Huge amounts of electricity.
Computing power and electricity.
If they can pull that off, they might be able to save the situation, but they're also going to put a lot of people out of work. And so that gets you right back into the fourth turning as well.
Right.
It doesn't, again, it's not lifting all ships. It's kind of creating another world of AI doing the work for people.
So one of the things that, and I do want to circle back to these riots and what's happening in the Middle East, but one of the things that has come out is in this big spending bill, the big beautiful bill, is some of the AI provisions. And one of the things that they have baked in there is that the federal government controls AI, I think for like 8 years or something like that. It's like states will not be allowed to have their own kind of sovereign relationship with AI. Like the federal government is going to.
It's a form of eminent domain.
Right. And one of the other things is, I also think it's in the bill, although I'd have to verify that, is that Sam Altman, who is the founder of OpenAI, he is very into limiting computing power because they don't want any rivals or competition with AI. So let's say, for instance, you and I had a shit ton of computing power, and we said, okay, we're gonna create things with our computing power, and AI, since it's the genie that's already out of the lamp, we're gonna take that genie and harness it, and possibly even use it against the system. They're terrified of that, so they want to limit computing power so that they're the ones that are always kind of running the technological. It's sort of like gun laws. Now, what's really interesting too.
Well, they want to create monopolies that they control. So they
absolutely
monopolize the resources that go into computing and AI.
Right.
And then to take the states out of it, that's to create eminent domain so that the federal government can just go in and loot things, really. Just grab property, loot things.
Well, I think
that would really give the federal power huge amounts of
well, they would. So what they would do is they would be able to essentially make all laws and jurisdiction for anything AI related at a federal level.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of power. But here's another part of that bill that's really weird, is that in that bill they're going to deregulate silencers.
Silencers.
Yeah, guns. Yeah, like if you try to get a silencer or what they call a suppressor. It used to be called silencers. In order, if you wanted one of those, you have to go through major hoopla, like hoops. You've got to declare yourself as a corporation or something, and there's $200 extra.
I guess maybe I've watched too much crime TV, but those are kind of used by hitmen.
Well, so I'm telling you, they're in this bill, they're deregulating silencers. So you're bypassing all the stuff that was already put on the books to get a silencer, and you could go to basically a gun dealer and just pay them straight up for a silencer. I mean, it's like these bills are weird because there are some things in there that people go, yeah, good, right? And then there's other things in there. It's like, oh no, that's bad. So it's an interesting trade-off. It's like, we'll give you silencers, but we'll take control of AI. That was my point.
It's like a mafia lobbying item. Put in silencers for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. I'll take half a dozen.
Well, of course, the other measure of all this AI is this surveillance state that's being set up, which we definitely got to get into tonight.
Yeah. So Laura Loomer, of course, demanding that Trump use Palantir now for these riots and the crisis.
Right. See, this goes back to the Trojan horse thing, and I keep talking about in the salami strategies.
And
it's a perfect example of it.
Well, it's like never let a good crisis go to waste, right?
Problem, reaction, solution.
So I did a show the other day on Palantir, and yeah, it's basically like Echelon and all these other programs that have gone before it, but on steroids. And they've been actually using Palantir in other parts, like a lot of these conflict zones and war theaters. They test out this technology, and so that's what they were doing. They were like using it in places like Afghanistan. Anytime they have like a hot zone, they deployed it so they could get really granular.
Well, they use it in Gaza for targeting. They put a social score, and I don't even know if it's called a social score, but a score on people.
Right. And so they have a score. That's part of it, because everybody has.
They would use that to target individuals in Gaza, have the computer just take over for targeting, and say, here's a likely bad guy. Go get him.
Right. But it's also based on this concept of the digital twin. And that's how you get that social score. And the digital twin is this is why they need the computing power, right? It's crunching data at a granular level that can predict where Russ Winter will be at 2 p.m. 2 weeks from now with about a 5% error.
And at what point does Russ Winter pick his nose afterwards?
well, no, I mean that's part of it, right? But that's what they're
we got to see the head guy of Palantir is this guy named Alex Karp, and Alex Karp is the equivalent of Leon Trotsky. I'm telling you. And up in the DMs, if you go up a little higher, you'll find a little clip that we should play of what this guy has to say for himself.
Well, this is perfect timing because here in the States on the left side, we are entering the Bolshevik zone for sure.
So let me help you find this. It's right there. So under the poster is Machiavelli.
Yeah, I got it.
He says, well. Yeah, play that.
Yeah, okay. It's a 19-second clip, so we're going to have to play this a couple times. But here we go.
And Trump's giving this guy a lot of money.
The most effective way for social change is humiliate your enemy and make them poor.
I don't think in win-lose. I think in domination. I love the idea of getting a drone and having light fentanyl-laced urine spraying on analysts who tried to screw us.
What the fuck?
The most effective way for social change is humiliate your enemy and make them poorer?
I don't think in win-lose. I think in domination. I love the idea of getting a drone and having light fentanyl-laced urine spraying on analysts who tried to screw us.
Alex is a Talmudic Jew. He's very much in the Talmudic Jew ideology.
So, do you know who that reminds me of? You know Al. You know Al Davis, who used to own the Raiders.
No.
Well, you don't know Al Davis? Oh my God, Al Davis, just win, baby, just win. He was the owner of the Raiders.
Yeah. Right.
And Al and George Steinbrenner have the same birthday, 4th of July. And Al, of course, was Jewish. And he would have these conversations with one of his business partners, team partner, Wayne Valley. And Wayne Valley said Al Davis loved and admired Hitler. and Al Davis would say, he said, I can't get over it. I admired that man so much. He just got so much done. He did whatever it took, right? And that's kind of the Alex Karp mentality.
Yeah, the dog eat dog mentality.
Yeah.
But it's also carrying around the grudges. You know, a lot of grudges that get carried around by these people, and then they get very, very wealthy. We keep talking about it over and over in our sessions. We've done it for years. The turtles and the pinch post, and who these people typically are. They're not exactly wonderful people. You know, you can't anything you see of Alex Karp, and there's more. We can go through a lot more. One where he says that sometimes it's just necessary to kill people. Right, comes right out and says
it. That's like a lot of these people believe that, though, don't they? He's just talk. It's the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. So this is the guy that has a lot of influence, and also through Peter Thiel, who's also involved in Palantir with Trump and JD Vance, and they're putting them in control of all your data, a lot of your data. They're going to collect huge amounts of data on people, create these social scores, rank them in terms of their criteria, which isn't the same criteria that you and I would use, and create their new world order. This is the new world order right here, and Trump's playing a major role in it.
Well, so I'm not here to defend Trump like totally, but I do have to put certain facts in place. So in 2016, I believe, Peter Thiel gave Donald Trump $1.2 million. That was the first time he was elected, and apparently Trump didn't do what he was supposed to do, or there was more he could have done for Thiel, but he didn't. Right. So what Thiel did is he invested in JD Vance. And he gave JD Vance, I believe, through all these PACs and stuff, $15 million to get elected as senator from Ohio.
Yeah, and then boosted the guy on the national stage. Yeah.
And prior to that, like JD Vance, his trajectory and his arc is sort of like the Republican version of Obama, which I've talked about. Both have stories about their youth that become popular, Dreams of My Father, and then JD Vance, Hillbilly Elegy. Both are raised by their grandparents, right? Both wind up going to Ivy League schools. JD Vance goes to Yale. Obama goes to Harvard. Okay. Now, they didn't make a movie out of Obama, but they did make a movie out of JD Vance. This is all like parallel. They're going parallel. JD Vance does like 1 year in the Marines. He's like a photographer or some shit. Obama supposedly does like a year or so working for one of these CIA front companies. And then he winds up at the same law firm in Chicago that Obama worked at, Sibley Austin. Right. So their paths are like almost, they're parallel. And then after Sibley Austin, he gets the call from Peter Thiel. And he goes to Silicon Valley, and Thiel sets him up with kind of like a mini hedge fund. Right. And that's where the wealthification of JD Vance starts. And Peter Thiel does this because he's grooming JD Vance.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel, in his mind, got screwed when he gave that money to Trump and Trump did nothing. So then JD Vance goes back to Ohio, runs for senator. He gets a shit ton more money.
Yeah, that's his insurance policy. All this stuff.
Well, so then here's what happens, right? Trump is running again. We're going to fast forward to 2020. Peter Thiel's not donating to the campaign, right? So what does Vance do? Vance organizes a Silicon Valley fundraiser where they're able to pony up $2.5 million and give it to the Trump campaign. It's Vance who is the guy that they want. He is there. They're not interested in Trump. They're not. Trump,
well, it almost kind of seems to me at this point that Trump's MIA a lot.
Well, here's a rumor.
He doesn't seem. I mean, he didn't seem to know what was really transpiring with the Russian thing and the big raid on Russia, the Ukrainians. He acts like he doesn't know what's going on, and sometimes I don't think he does. So I think he's just kind of almost like a figurehead.
Well, unfortunately, he's becoming more and more like that. Now, there's another rumor about Trump that is circulating, and apparently people have noticed this very conspicuous bulge in his pants, but it's not, in an anatomical bulge because it wasn't there before. And people who know about like sort of the placement and the structure of this thing, they know what it is. And it's part leg brace, and the other part is it's a catheter.
Oh.
So there's a very good chance that Trump is having to use a catheter because he's losing control of his ability to urinate. And then the leg brace is also part of the deal because apparently when you add all these things up together, it is a sign of early onset dementia. And he's losing his ability to walk.
The catheter thing, and of course, I went through that experience, but it's corrected by surgery.
Well, but I don't know if it's the same. I don't. You weren't going through early onset dementia. This is everything that I've read about this. These are people whose relatives have gone through.
He is not. Yeah, he is. Trump is not as intellectually sharp as he was before. The first term, I mean, he was kind of witty. He'd say funny things.
Yeah.
Kind of had some appeal. Now he's just weird. He really is. I call him Big Brain Trump. Of course, I don't like him. Everybody listening to us now knows that. Everybody thinks he's kind of biased, but it's just a fact. It really is.
I'm surprised that he's actually still in office at this point because
he's not that young.
Well, it's these guys like Alex Karp and Peter Thiel. They're the ones that put JD Vance in, and JD Vance has a lot of political payback to do for these dudes.
Well, that's unfortunate because this is Alex Karp guy in particular. I mean, Peter Thiel is a little bit more low profile. The last link I sent to you, let's look at a little bit more of Alex Karp. Let's dig into him a little bit more. You see it right at the bottom underneath the...
Is that the Winter Watch?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the top story where he's on Fox News, play that and see what he has to say.
Okay. All right, here we go. Daniel Hakatuko. All right, he says Jewish CEO of Palantir, and you're just quoting that tweet there. Let's find out what Mr. Karp has to say.
The primary way to create peace in this world is to scare our adversaries when they wake up, when they go to bed, while they're seeing their mistress, whatever they're doing, they're scared. If you want to have peace in the world, that's how you do it. And that is our peace-giving offering this Christmas season to our adversaries. We are going to help this government be more transparent, work with Partnership in America, and our goal is everyone who does not like America, does not like what we stand for, does not like the West, thinks we're useful idiots, is going to be scared and uncomfortable more tomorrow than today.
Well, that is a nice big bow around a Christmas gift.
That is our Christmas present. Happy Merry Seasons, whatever you celebrate. Please, and to all supporters of Palantir, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. And to all people who've hated on us, enjoy your coal.
Enjoy your coal. So who is we? He keeps referring to our and we. Like we. Like he's got the total control on the whole we factor. He's the ultimate judge of we and our and how we're going to treat our enemies and our adversaries.
So,
what a totally weird thing to even say on television.
Right. I think if she wasn't so giggles, she could have said, "Could you define we?" Right, but she didn't do that. I will say this.
Yeah, the we is we're a big club and you ain't in it. That's the way I look at it.
This is the Hegelian dialectic, which you were talking about just moments ago. Problem, reaction, solution. Right? We have a problem. The problem is that I think clearly there is more chaos, more disorder. There's less. We're becoming a more of a low trust society. All this engineered, by the way, all of it. And the people who are demonstrating those qualities, the qualities that do not make it a reasonable, orderly, peaceful world, a lot of them have been so emboldened to commit crimes, perpetrate acts of violence, that they have no fear. Right? There's no rule of law. There's no respect for any of this stuff, right?
Right. So the solution to people like that is Palantir and Laura Loomer. Right. Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
That's the Hegelian dialectic. That's the that's the Trojan horse.
And listen, just to have this fair conversation, that's in our society now. Like, it has been completely socially engineered. And then how do we rein it back in? Well, this is Alex Karp's gift to us.
The problem with Alex Karp and his friends is that in his mind, everybody is a terrorist also. Anti-Semites, people that are against Gaza, against Israel, anti-Israel types, people that are opposed to genocide. There's some important issues of the day that people are weighing in on, and that's where he weighs in on it too. And all these guys use the term terrorist way too much. It's getting competitive, and that's a key word. Is if they identify you as a terrorist, they're going to throw you in with all the criminals, and that's how the Cheka operated. When the Cheka kind of mowed the lawn in Russia, they just took out all kinds of people. There's a really amazing movie I would recommend for everybody. It was made in 1992 in the Russian Federation when the communism fell, called The Chekist. And in this, they have a trot. They're going through names. They have lists. And they would describe one guy as a cleric, or one guy was in the army, or one guy was in the previous government. Just terrorist, death, execution. And then they would take him down in the basement and shoot him. That's what this guy reminds me of. So there's one more we got to watch on this guy.
Hold on 1 second. I think Alex Karp's mother is black.
He doesn't look black. He looks Jewish.
So let me just give you his background here. Alexander Caedmon Karp was born in New York City, the eldest son of Robert Joseph Karp, a Jewish clinical pediatrician, and Leah Janes, okay, that's her name, an African-American artist.
Wow.
He was raised with his younger brother, Oliver Ben Karp, in Philadelphia. Like his father, he attended Central High School, graduated in 1985. He has said he struggled with dyslexia from an early age. Karp was influenced by his parents' activism for civil rights and social justice during his youth. So he goes from being a civil rights, social justice
leftist all the way to being a kosher right winger. Yeah,
okay.
That's a natural transition, though.
So let's just take a look at this real quick, so I have it up here. A little bit of background, Alex. You'll love this. Karp started his career as a research associate at the Sigmund Freud Institute in Frankfurt, the old Frankfurt School. Karp has said he invested in startups and stocks after receiving an inheritance from his grandfather. His success led him to found London-based money management firm Caedmon Group to manage the money of high net worth individuals.
So here we have that familiar pattern that goes all the way, all the way back to the 19th century. Some of the people we've talked about, or something where these guys mysteriously get a bunch of money to invest.
Turtle on the fence post.
Jeffrey Epstein, same type of background. Now, come on, we're not in Kansas anymore. Come on, we're not in California anymore.
So here's his background. He does have a collegial background, and some of it is fairly high level here. He earned a BA in philosophy from Haverford, then enrolled at Stanford Law School, where he earned a Juris Doctor in 1992, and that's where he meets Peter Thiel. After his undergraduate studies in law school, Karp earned a PhD in neoclassical social theory from the Goethe University in Frankfurt, 2002. Karp's doctoral thesis supervised by Carola Breed.
No, your Frankfurt's also your automatic Rothschild connection, too.
Absolutely. Was titled Aggression in der Lebenswelt. The Irvington, I don't know how to, I'm going to butcher that. Aggression in the Life World. The extension of Parsons' concept of aggression, describing the connection between jargon, aggression, and culture. He is fluent in German and speaks French. So this is where Alex Karp's background comes from. So he is not, so technically, I can see that. I can see that he's kind of mixed. I can see that.
Could have fooled me, but yeah, okay. You pretty much established it.
So technically he's not Jewish, but
okay. Well, so one more word from Alex. Yeah. This last little clip. It's short.
That's just technically. All right, I'll get back there. Hold on. Let me get back there. Okay, this is the one from Tony Michaels. All right, here we go.
Yes.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them. Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Okay.
There's that enemies thing again.
Well, that's also very nebulous, right? That's like we. Who are the enemies?
Terrorists.
Now
terrorists and enemies of the Talmudic Jews.
Well, let's play this out a little bit. So let's say Palantir gets all these contracts, becomes part of this social credit score dystopia. There's no guarantee that J.D. Vance can become president again in 2028. I would think that he probably would, but let's just say he doesn't. And all of a sudden now we have another regime, different, that has Palantir at its disposal, right? And the enemies now become different. They're different enemies. And it's like once it's embedded in the system, whoever has control over that power is the one that wields the force. So let's say for the first couple of years, it hits all our supposed enemies or targets or whatever they are. And most people, let's say they're conservative on the right, they agree with that. But there's no guarantee moving forward that those enemies and targets are going to remain the same. So this is real nightmare territory here.
Yeah, it's just mowing the lawn mentality. But basically what it all comes down to is it's all controlled by ZOG, whether it's Trump. I mean, I don't want to just pick on Trump alone because the whole system of what I call ZOG. I use that term repeatedly. And then J.D. Vance is a factor of ZOG. So we've been captured by these people. And they have technology, they have a lot of wealth. They can establish themselves with greater and greater technology that's just getting to be incredible.
So if people are not familiar with the term ZOG, it stands for Zionist Occupied Government. I would also, this is where we get into the Pincer effect. That's like the right side of the dialectic. We have the left side of the dialectic, which is more kind of Bolshevik left.
But still ZOG. It's still ZOG.
It's still ZOG, but it's the other side of it.
Right.
And this is what I really wanted to get into today.
Okay.
Is how we're being squeezed in the middle by both of these seemingly disparate ideologies, but they're being controlled by the same hands. And
right. And in terms of the topic today, which is the illegals, you have to kind of ask yourself, okay, the left dialectic, are the people responsible for letting 21 million illegals in the country? Right. That's a pretty big operation.
It's huge.
Who ran that? Who ran that little program? So then you create a problem.
Now you've got the Mayorkas, right? Mayorkas, who's
Hebrew Immigration Society, the
pious
charities.
Exactly. So now we have the left side, the left hand, which is, hey, we're going to do all these things because it feels really good, and this is what Jesus would have done. So the left side has their social doing, right? And now the right side comes in and says,
but the left side is also administering very poor governance, very poor. It's just poor government. Is that what the American people really asked for?
No, the American people, when Biden got elected, they were like anyone but Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
And what they did, for all intents and purposes, is they elected a reanimated cadaver as president. I mean, we all make fun of it because that was the only thing we could do, right? I mean, what we were witnessing was beyond anything we'd ever seen before. No president had ever appeared that feeble. And while everyone around the president and the media was always extolling his virtues and how sharp he is and pushing back on these ideas that he's not well. And we all knew that it was bullshit. We could see that there might have been like different versions of Biden. And now all of a sudden, like the side that just, drove that nightmare said, well, we probably could have done a better job. And, it's like, I think if I look back on it, whoever it is, some media boob. Yeah, I probably could have done a better job of, really.
Well, typically it's the usual suspects everywhere.
Well, like Jake Tapper. Like Jake Tapper is doing, a tap dance backward on Biden. Right. But for almost 4 years, though, he was adamant that it was these people on the other side that were hating Biden. But it's just, it's fucking insulting. Right.
And then you look at cities like San Francisco and you wonder how those people got elected, and Los Angeles kind of did a big turnover of their political apparatchiks. Kind of went from reasonably competent to bad just overnight. not just Biden, but a lot of little macro examples. But anyway, go ahead. We'll continue. So you don't have any kind of reasonable governance over this issue at all. Now we swing over to the kosher right. So go ahead.
Exactly. That's what now we swing, and it's like, oh, please restore order for us, right? And it's like, okay,
bring on Palantir,
find
these creepy guys like Alex Karp to install this thing. Like, we really have faith in that guy. Well, he's just the manifestation of what we were just talking about that happened in San Francisco or Seattle or wherever. It's just the same brew. And if you kind of look into their backgrounds, it's the same peculiar type of people, and a lot of mixed race people. I'm noticing. I mean, maybe I haven't really noticed that enough, but it seems like every time you bring one of these creeps up, he's like a mixed race.
You have another example?
I just not off the top of my head. I'm just seeing it. Yeah, I'm just kind of seeing it.
Well, look. It's a very touchy subject, but if you have, let's say somebody is, part theoretical black, part theoretical white. So I dated a mixed woman one time, and the story she told me, this is kind of what happens in their world. It's not an easy place to be, and I'm not giving them a pass, but it's not an easy place to be. So she went to a primarily all-white school in Baltimore, and because she looked black, they didn't like her. She was one of the few that were there, right? And so she started to get into fights with the other girls at that school. And then the school came to her mother, and they said, "Hey, we got a solution for your daughter. We're gonna send her to a primarily black school where she'll be able to socialize and fit in better." Well, she went there, and because she was kind of lighter, not really dark, she got in fights. She got in fights with those girls.
Yeah,
because she wasn't dark enough. And it's a really weird no man's land to be when you're in that territory, and it creates some pretty heavy psychological distortions at times. So. Yeah, it's just
it's good breeding ground for psychotics to kind of put into power.
Well, it kind of splits their identity.
How about a Barack Obama? You asked me for another example. How about Barack Obama?
What the hell is Barack Obama anyway? Right, like he's supposedly white and black, but I've also seen Indonesian, right? I've seen Indonesian guys that look like Obama.
He was raised as a white guy. I mean, he was raised as a white person.
He was raised as a white person up until about after around 9 or 10, right? Because before that, he's in Indonesia and he's hanging out with Lolo Soetoro in Indonesia. Lolo Soetoro.
Just such strange turtles on a fence post. This is what they are.
Lolo Soetoro basically was, when he was alive, was like stupid rich because he was involved in, number one, trying to keep Sukarno in power. And he was this guy in Indonesia who was like the fixer for the West, which meant that there were oil companies, that there were whatever kind of resource companies.
Yeah, and wasn't he also involved in some of the exterminations that they were doing?
Absolutely. Not only there, but in places like Vietnam. Like Lolo Soetoro is this major figure behind the scenes in Indonesia. And as he's alive, he acquires a huge amount of wealth.
We're just led to believe he's just some kind of normal Indonesian.
No. This guy was a major fixer. And so what he does is he leaves like serious amounts of money to Obama and I believe Obama's half sister. So Obama comes out of that thing with a massive war chest that he's going to inherit when he turns 18. Then he goes to Hawaii, and there he's raised at a upper middle class, life, goes to Punahou, which is a private academy. To your point, that's where he goes through that. And so, man, like it's just bizarre how these people rise to power, what their backgrounds are. They're never really what they seem to be. And then we deal with the sociopathy that they acquire along the way, either through, their journey and hanging out with Frank Marshall Davis or whatever it is, right? And we're the ones that are recipients of it. Thank you very much.
So now we're swinging the other way to a kind of a combination of Chabois Goy like J.D. Vance and Trump that sort of have weird backgrounds. They're kind of picked up by certain elements, and then you mix them in with the Jewish controllers, and then that's your kosher right. And they want to dominate. It's all about domination.
Yeah. What's his name? Stephen Miller. Right in the same group. Right when Stephen Miller was in high school, he was notorious. Like he grew up in Orange County, and he was about as far right as you could get. Back in the time where everybody was like leaning liberal, he was like a notorious rightist when he was in high school. So Miller has been feeding that to Stroff for a long time. He's another one of them. Yeah, so we're in this pincer effect now with these two conflicts that are brewing. One, obviously, very kind of national, local, Bolshevik-y. And now it looks like we're on the precipice of a war. Russ, have you run across any footage from what's happened in Iran?
Well, I was watching Al Jazeera. There's a lot of things burning. So they hit a bunch of, one of the things they really went after Iran's ballistic capabilities, which is just a smart military move. Nobody's going to argue against that. So that was hit pretty hard, but they also are attacking nuclear reactors. That's a no-no. That's basically your threat to humanity type of shit all over again. Because if you start taking out nuclear reactors and create a Chernobyl effect and start creating a big environmental pollution, that could spread all over the world, all over the Middle East, all over Pakistan, India, kind of a Chernobyl effect. So the Israelis are really playing with fire on that. They should not be doing that. That's probably ranks in there with the top war crime that they've been committing yet, even counting Gaza. So that's an area for real concern. There's talk about 5 waves going in. There's this second wave hitting right now. They're hitting. It's called Cordo. I have a map that shows the different nuclear reactants. There's one.
Let me play this clip. This is an Al Jazeera clip. And this is, let's see here. Let's play it.
Oh, that's the assassinations, right? This is the assassinations. So they're taking drones that they launch right from within Iran, and those are assassinations of Iranian scientists and leaders.
بالش کاملا تخریب شده و سوخته پایینش سالمه.
Now, if you notice in the DMs, I sent a picture in towards the bottom of a hole in the wall.
What's that?
There's a photograph of a hole in one of those apartment walls that'll explain some of this.
Yeah,
near the bottom.
Yeah. Hold on.
This is actually put up by Mossad Commentary on X. It's not up.
I know.
See that hole?
Yeah.
They had the guy in his bedroom.
This is what Palantir would do.
Well, this is their drone technology.
But I know, but they had to know where he lived.
Yeah, right.
Right. They had to know when he'd be home.
Yeah, it's
right?
part of the targeting, exactly.
Why would he be living in a place like that, though?
It could just be a scientist. Who knows? I mean, who knows who it is?
Let me ask you something. This is a question that I have. How much, like, you remember when it was back, I think, 2018, I think, there was some kind of like gas attack in Syria, and everybody was up in arms, and Trump wasn't going to do anything. And then all of a sudden, maybe it was because he had pressure from his daughter, whomever, he decides to launch this like missile strike, but it doesn't really do anything. It's like some building that has really zero use, and seems on Trump's part to be like, just, let's give them bread, right? It's like not even very strategic. So it looks like he's being tough and strong, but it's really just,
you've seen that happen throughout the years,
right? So let me just ask you a question. This is where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
because I've always had serious doubts about this whole aggression between Israel and Iran.
Right.
I just have to ask the question: how much of what we're seeing is actually real?
How much is just manufactured bullshit, right?
Right.
I mean, you're not the first person that's come up with that theory.
No.
And, I got to believe that Iran is pretty infiltrated and infested with Zio agents, with ZOG.
Can we just take a look at Iran's leader for 1 second? This Khamenei guy. What does this guy look like to you, Russ?
No idea.
He looks like a rabbi to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a very extensive PDF that was done by one of Miles Mathis's people.
Yeah.
That goes into the Khomeini Homan line. And it traces these guys back to a group that is not Islamic. I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, Miles Mathis always has interesting theories. There's something. I mean, there's something about they don't. The thing that's a little suspicious. It doesn't seem like Iran is really able to land decisive blows. And so now the story on this. So the story on this one last night is that Israelis managed to degrade or damage a good chunk of, maybe half or more of their ballistic missile capability. And now supposedly Iran has been greatly reduced. Wow. They hit their nuclear plants. Now that's a lot. That's a mowing operation. The Israelis are going to have to keep doing that, but eventually trigger a nuclear disaster.
That's what we're being told.
Yeah.
Again, it's like we were told that January, October, was it October 7th, right?
Well, that was fake.
Well, but when we were told, everybody was hook, line, and sinker on this thing. But it was just like, okay, well, this is terrible. This is disaster. This is, tragedy, travesty, whatever, right? And there are still people that believe that's real and what happened there was real. And I just find it's very difficult now for us to determine what the fuck is really going on.
Well, I think the thing that will answer your theory and maybe create a validity to it is that here tonight, probably or soon, the Iranians supposedly have thousands and thousands and thousands of missiles, including hypersonic missiles that can hit Israel undetected and cause a lot of damage. So we should be seeing retaliation coming from Iran shortly, within the next 48 hours. It should just kick the shit out of Israel. Is that going to happen? Are we going to wake up to see pictures of, buildings turn into parking lots in Tel Aviv? Because that's what should happen now. There's no reason why they shouldn't attack. We just saw pictures where they attacked civilians, killed people in the neighborhood around these targets. So the Iranians are now saying, civilians are not a constraint. It's not just going to be military targets. So now you're the supreme leader of Iran, and your staff is coming to you and saying, hey, we don't really have that many missiles left. Now what do you do?
Maybe there was never any to begin with. No, seriously. Or there was never going to be any retaliation to begin with. And then this is the
or that the whole nuclear program was bullshit to begin with, and just a facade.
Well, again, we know so very little about what goes on behind the scenes in these countries. There was a point in time, I remember Scott Ritter was investigating this, where it was the International Atomic Energy, whatever, EIAGA, or whatever the fuck it is. And so I think he was doing that with either Iran or Iraq. I forget which one it was. But we don't have anything like that anymore. Like, there's nobody actually going into these countries and inspecting whether or not this
transparency is really poor on all.
No, we just have to take everything via the media, and like, who runs the fucking media? It's the same people in many cases that are running both sides of this shit show. Right? So we're just supposed to take it on face value that this is what they're doing.
Well, if it's a real event, then this should trigger a major conflict. I just don't see how that can't evolve out of this. It's too serious.
Okay, so let's.
But if it's bullshit, then it's just a big distraction.
Right. And we should know fairly quickly, right? We should probably know within the next 72 hours, right?
Yep. Israel should get hit. They should get hit with a barrage of hypersonic missiles that can't be stopped.
Again, it depends on where they get hit, right? If they get hit in some barely inhabited area, then what good does it do? And that's kind of what's happened before in the past when Iran has done something, which you mentioned, like failure to launch, not a lot of impact. Every time they've retaliated, it's like, yeah, so like nothing burger, right? So are we going to see another? The only way that this works is if half of Tel Aviv is just gone. Right. This is the only way this thing works.
Something meaningful and significant that we all can see, and it's not arguable.
Right. Exactly.
We're not going to be sitting here going, "Well, that kind of looks fake over there." That looks staged.
Right.
No question. None of this Russ Winter stage stuff even enters in the equation.
So here's a question I'd ask you: would the Israelis be willing to sacrifice half of Tel Aviv for support in a much broader conflict?
I don't think so.
You don't?
I think the tribe is too strong for that.
I think any group, I'm not going to just specifically target this one group, any group whose goal is complete and utter power, if they have to, say, eliminate a quarter of Tel Aviv in order to do that, that the greater gain for that group would be worth it. And that's any group.
Well, but this is more entering into your end times philosophy that these people believe. Then it comes into play. Then they don't care because they're all going to be raptured into heaven or whatever because they got net wings.
Well, there's certainly
that's like a completely different category.
Well, the Christian Zios would definitely be way into that. I'm just talking about the kind of the ultimate sort of will to power, like psychopathic society that says it's a reasonable trade-off for us to take a quarter of one of our cities out, so that as a result of that, we get the support for like greater Israel, right? Like,
right, we could claim another Holocaust and get out
that is where the psychopathic mind goes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then you would definitely get the U.S. support for
destroying
Iran, probably everybody else in the neighborhood, completely greater Israel.
You know, so we're on the clock now with this, and apparently American fighters, from what I heard, this is what I've heard, I can't confirm it, but American and British fighters were also involved in some of these sorties, which automatically involves both nations. So I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. Have you heard anything along those lines?
No, but Trump did say, and I don't know why he puts it this way, he's just bragging about what a great operation it was and how our superior weapons were used. Well, why don't you just admit that you're involved in the operation?
Right.
You know, it's like he's being a braggart about that, not keeping that under wraps. Yeah, they used some special weaponry that we provided them. Well, that's sufficient for the Iranians to retaliate against the U.S.
Yeah, or maybe we use that special weaponry.
Yeah,
and then they have to pass it off on the Israeli side.
He says, "Here's what he says." He says, "The United States says I told them it will be much worse than anything they know or anticipated or were told. That the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen, and they're all dead now, and it will only get worse. There has been already great death and destruction, but there's still time to make this slaughter with the next one already planned attacks being even more brutal come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there's nothing left." Well, the deal is Iran has to surrender. That's the only option they have.
And so if they surrender, then what?
Then we won't kill them.
Well, then who runs the government? I mean, that really becomes... Because that government...
It's a regime change, exactly. He's basically asking for a regime change in Iran.
I keep coming back to the fact that ultimately we put those people in power. When they pulled the rug out from under the Shah, that was a MI6, U.S., CIA, Mossad operation.
Yeah.
They pulled the rug out from under the Shah.
I mean, Iran's kind of changed. You know, of course, I have an Iranian family, so Iran has changed. It's not quite the same as it was then. It's not the most popular government ever. There's a lot of criticism of them. But the language that he's using, it's our weapons. Israeli has lots of them, and we have a lot of great death and destruction. Make a deal. Well, that's pretty harsh language.
Well, again, it is harsh language, but the Khomeinis are an extension of Ayatollah Khomeini. We put those people in power, right? We put them in power, and you don't put those people in power at that time unless you're on board unless the Israelis are on board with it. So,
well, after they came into power, the United States was involved in goading and supplying Iraq into a very costly war with Iran. So that's part of the history. That's
another story.
That really pushed Iran into a sort of isolated distancing from the West. And mostly it was in response to chicanery.
Yeah.
So to me, it always seems like Iran is always being goaded and given a bowl of shit to choose from. And so with their history and their attitude towards the West and the way they're being gamed, it's just hard for me to believe that Trump thinks he could get away with a statement like that without some kind of retribution. So we're going to have to find out if Iran can deliver retribution. That's the big open question that they're going to have to see. Can they land blows on the United States and Israel?
I don't know, Russ. I just feel like we're in this weird time. Nothing is as it seems. I feel like we're getting real close to a major false flag kind of event that pulls us into a deeper engagement in that part of the world. And we know how these false flags operate. They're generally engineered by one or more groups to appear to be something that isn't exactly what it appears to be. And I don't know, I just feel like this is...
Well, if the United States gets drawn into a war with Iran, then probably Iran will definitely lose. They probably couldn't handle that.
There's
other players in the Middle East. There's Egypt, there's Turkey.
What if it's like this? Let me lay this out to you, okay? So what if the war that we're envisioning is like an old style war, but the new war is very different, right? Like it's a cyber war, and instead of the United States being hit with missiles, or what would happen if the entire grid in the United States went down, and it went down for 3 or 4 days, right? And we've got all these riots going on, and you know what happens when things go dark. It could be just,
just overlaps with all these other dialectic stuff that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And then what happens is that they're able to trace this thing like back to Iran, theoretically, that they're the ones that are responsible for the cyber attack. That, I think, would be something all of a sudden we're having to deal with. And then what's the ramifications of that, Russ?
Yeah, and the other thing is that Iran might find itself in a situation where they have to resort to soft targets, and that could be non-Israeli Jews in the United States.
But what if Iran didn't even do it? Like this is what this is what I'm getting at. Like they just say, well, Iran did it. But what if one of their neighbors did it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Iran has the capabilities to fight an asymmetric war against the United States. It might be the only thing they have.
Maybe, yeah. So, but they could trace it theoretically back. It's just like all those guys in those planes, number one, weren't on those planes. We know that for a fact because they were still alive and living in other parts of the Middle East. The whole 9/11 story is dubious at best, and yet that's what we got, right? Yeah. And so this is along the lines.
Pull that off. They could try anything. That's just ultimate chutzpah.
So let's play this out just a little bit, okay? So let's say we do have this grid thing go down for a few days, and it does go back to Iran again, theoretically. What do you think happens domestically as a result of that? And instead of doing an airstrike ground war thing, because I think those types of wars are still going to happen, but everything that's going to take place moving forward is going to be, I think, much more cyber oriented. What do you think the U.S. would do as a form of some kind of retaliation for something like that if it wasn't like airstrikes or ground troops or take out Iran's oil refineries, oil producing abilities, to starve them economically? They may do that anyway, even without a false flag. Right.
Take them back to the Stone Ages. And some of that may come back on the United States too. So, I mean, the whole question is, what is Iran or other allies of Iran, even Russia, capable of.
Let me throw this out there to you and see what you think about this. So what if the end goal around all of this is not Iran, it's not Israel, it's the United States? Okay. And instead of the retaliatory thing with missiles and bombs, we have this cyber thing. And the grid goes down for 3 days. But when they finally get it back up, it's not the same. Right? This would be their excuse to launch a new cyber safe, cyber secure America. Right?
Perfect.
And then
perfect.
Yep. And now we got biometric recognition. You got to prove who you are.
Let's get that theory out there publicly, because that could be what happened.
I think this is where this is going.
Yeah. And then people could come back and replay this episode here.
Yeah.
We'll be put in there with the legends.
Yeah. I think this is ultimately where this is going, because the goal is not that country. The goal is the United States. And to flip it into more of a controlled grid system.
Yeah, in fact, Trump has said as much. He says, the only reason we have any interest in the Middle East is to help protect our our friend Israel. That's what he says. Otherwise, we have no business being there. He just admitted it. Sometimes Trump is very frank.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you have a little bit more going on, or some of your buddies that are around you. Maybe you don't know about it, Donald, but some people around you, that some of these really creepy people that we just talked about earlier in the show.
So Tom says 7 minutes ago, CNN reporting that Israel identifies incoming missiles launched from Iran. Okay.
So the question is going to be, are they going to hit anything, cause any damage?
Yeah.
Be an effective retaliation or just a joke?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be kind of embarrassing for Iran if it's just a joke and just hits a cow someplace.
Exactly. Having missiles and then where they go and what they do, that's a whole different story. Iranian military's underground bases too. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with it. I just sorry.
I think they've got their missiles tucked away. I don't think the Israelis did a Pearl Harbor on that many of them.
They've already hit down Tel Aviv. All right, let's just see. Let's see what happens. Let's see if they hit.
Are we watching?
So let's see. This is 11 hours ago.
Yeah, we got to get something recent.
I'm
up to date on everything up to the time we came on the show.
Okay. This is 11 hours ago.
If Night Slight would like to put the link on where maybe we can see something.
So there's some kind of a cloud here. I'll show you.
It's about 9:30. It's about 9:30 in Tel Aviv. It's not that late. It's some kind of a cloud.
Some kind of a cloud. So for Iran to have successfully retaliated, this part of the entire screen would be gone.
Right, and I would. My first observation is a little bit dark for 9:30 on one of the longest days of the year. Still a little bit light out. It's kind of dark. Looks a little CGI. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying possibly for a live picture. And what's going on? Not much.
The cloud doesn't seem to be moving very much either. That's weird.
But it looks like something kind of hit back there. And look at the skyline. Look at the granularity of the skyline there, especially around the cloud.
Yeah.
This looks like CGI.
I mean, it could be real, but could also be augmented. I mean, there's like these gradations of so-called reality now, right?
Here's a good question. If Iranian hypersonic missiles are so great, why would there be any air base left for these 200 planes and the attacks to return to? Exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to hit that many air bases, a couple of them.
NBC explosions in Tel Aviv. Explosions of what? Again, color me like.
Yeah. We're getting the feeling of being. Yeah, we're starting to get the feeling of being gamed here a little bit, Robert. I understand, but we'll have to kind of see. I mean, this so far, this looks a little sus.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do we have here? Any other questions? Working and listening. Turkey is a hidden powerhouse. What are your thoughts on Turkey, Russ?
Cowards. Cracker asses, cowards. Probably the Turkish army is probably one of the, on an individual soldier level, is probably one of the, they're not cowards, but the leadership is. I think Turkey is an example of ZOG capture and control. Iran, I'm not so sure of. I can see why you might think so, though.
All right, I want to do this. I want to change tracks a little bit here, if you don't mind. Not too far, though. I want to go to the other side. I want to go to the left side of this thing. Okay. And I wanted to take a look at Claudia Sheinbaum, who is the current president of Mexico. Okay. And so funny, like when you want to look into her background, and she's a full-blown like Bolshevik communist. Like that's her roots. And you won't really find very much of that on her Wikipedia page, but there's this publication called Jacobin. Are you familiar with Jacobin at all? So Jacobin is a really hardcore revolutionary like magazine. They actually make a magazine. They have a website. And they get into Claudia Sheinbaum's background. I just want to bring this up so we can just see how deep those threads run through. And I'm going to connect something up here. Run through her life and what's going on now in Los Angeles. Now, remember, Jacobin is pro Claudia Sheinbaum, but they're going to give us all the goods. The right attacked Mexican president-elect Claudia Sheinbaum for being a Jewish foreigner and communist during her campaign. Her grandfather and his brother, immigrants from Lithuania, were both of those things. On Monday night, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo made history as Mexico's first female president-elect, winning nearly 60% of the vote. The writing was on the wall from the beginning. The Mexican right, though, seemed to start out its campaign confident in victory, as the polls stubbornly continued to show Sheinbaum's tremendous lead over Xochitl Galvez. The opposition coalition became obviously desperate. So let's get into this here. Sheinbaum's Jewish heritage was an obvious target, but the tack the right took is striking. It tried using this fact to show that she was not actually Mexican. This idea actually predates the electoral campaign, with social media rumors that have spread since at least 2021, alleging that Sheinbaum, the mayor of Mexico City, was born in Europe and was therefore ineligible for presidency. But it was presented most explicitly when former right-wing President Vicente Fox, who rode the resistance wave to a blip of U.S. relevance early in Donald Trump's presidency, went so far as to attack her as a Bulgarian Jew and Jewish foreigner. So why is it Sheinbaum is being accused of being a foreigner? Historian Daniela Glazer writes that post-revolutionary Mexican state promoted a national identity based on the idea of a homogeneous population, the product of intermixing between natives and Spaniards, in its glorification of a race of bronze. I've been talking about this for years. Like that's been sort of the global goal, that's the sort of reverse eugenicist standard.
Yeah, mestizos.
Right.
Yeah.
Gleiser says it excluded anything that did not smell of Latin Americanness, classifying foreigners into those who could be assimilated into the Mexican mestizae and those who could not. Among those who fell into the latter category were Africans, Asians, and Jews. This is likely why Sheinbaum's campaign placed special emphasis on her Mexicanness and identification. I believe she was born in Mexico, wasn't she? Let me just check her Wikipedia here. Hold on.
But she's she's Lithuanian Jew, clearly.
Yeah. So she's born in Mexico City. And because she's born there, therefore she qualifies as being Mexican, right? Let me go back.
Yeah, as a citizen, right?
Yeah, yeah. So listen to her heritage. Okay, it's true that her family did originally come from somewhere else, though Mexico was not as successful at drawing migration as other Latin American countries, where two people who did end up there were Chon and Solomon Sheinbaum, Claudia's grandfather and great uncle. The story of these two men, communists, who survived imprisonment and deportation and rubbed shoulders with the great personalities of the Comintern, can shed some light on both who Claudia Sheinbaum is and the past and future of Mexican politics. Born in Lithuania under the Russian Empire, Chon, 1906-1989, and Solomon Sheinbaum, (19, grew up in times of great change. They shared a mother, but had different fathers. Chon's died months before he was born, and their mother remarried in 1913. Searching for opportunities denied to them by Tsarism, the boys sailed to the United States. They returned to Europe the next year after 1914. The family lived in Poland in 1920, then went back to Lithuania. As children, Chon and Solomon lived the after effects of the revolution. As young men, they saw firsthand the unimaginable political shifts unleashed by the revolution of 1917, including their own emancipation as Jews. Lithuania was a nerve center of Jewish political and labor activism in the Russian Empire. The Jewish Labor Bund, for example, was founded in Vilna in 1897. By 1920, Chon had joined the Communist Party of Lithuania. Following the Lithuanian-Soviet War, the party was outlawed, and he was in prison for 3 years. It would not be the last time he'd be marked for punishments as a communist. So basically, they have these deep communist.
Yeah, what a total turtle on a fence post.
Well, listen to this. This is where it gets very interesting. Okay, by 1925, the Sheinbaum brothers were in Cuba. Whether or not the island had been their plan, the brothers joined the newborn Communist Party of Cuba, the PCC, where Solomon became active both in the party's Jewish section and youth work department, as well as in the National Workers' Conference Confederation of Cuba, CNOC. Though they were newcomers in the Americas and learning Spanish, they would not have been culturally isolated in their organizations. Jews had a strong presence in the PCC, where 4 of the party's 13 founding members were Jewish. Like other Comintern-affiliated parties, the Cuban Party had
the term should be Comintern infested parties, infiltrated parties.
So this whole thing with
infiltrators,
with Cuba, right? Like Cuba, they've got they joined the Mexican communist. These are the people that raised this woman.
Yeah.
Okay, they raised this woman. So there's a deep involvement with the Communist Party of Cuba. Okay? Who else has had a deep involvement with the Communist Party in Cuba? Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles. Wow. Karen Bass had been to Cuba, some people claim up to 15 times. And she eventually became a leader of this group called Venceremos. And they would take young Americans and they would go to Cuba and they would build houses and chop the sugarcane, but they were also learning firsthand from Fidel Castro about the Cuban style Marxism.
Is Karen Bass like an American black?
Yes.
Black American?
Yes. But she does, let's put it this way. She doesn't look like Ella Fitzgerald. All right. No. We'll show you Karen Bass here. And Karen Bass winds up actually marrying.
Do I dare ask the question? Is Karen Bass going to be another one of these mixed characters?
Well, so this is Karen, right? I mean,
she looks a little Hispanic.
And this is her when she was in Cuba. That is Cuba.
She looks a little Hispanic, though. She
does look a little. This is almost like the Cuban flag.
Yeah.
So now we have a mayor of Los Angeles who has deep ties to Cuba and communism. I don't think there's any disputing that. And we have a mayor, a president of Mexico who basically has the same ties. And here we go, right? We're having this dust up in Los Angeles, and Claudia Sheinbaum has been very vocal about it. And she supports everything that's going on there. And it feels to me like Karen Bass is an agent. That's what she is.
Yeah, it feels like maybe a little bit of a takeover by the Mexican leftist into American politics.
Absolutely, 100%. Look, here's a picture right here. Here's a picture of her and Castro.
Bass was born in Los Angeles, daughter of Wilhelmina Duckett and DeWitt Talmadge Bass.
So there she is with Castro.
Huh. Look. She looks pretty more than friendly.
More than just, hey, I just came here a couple times.
You know what? And Fidel Castro loved the women. He loved the women. He loved to bed women. These guys look pretty friendly.
And this is the Vance Ramos Brigade. They're also connected to the SDS.
Look, he's got his hand on her shoulder.
They're very close. They're very, very close. So this is all about the Vance Ramos. And some of the people that were part of it are interesting, like Karen Bass, mayor, right? Another former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villagomez. These people went to Cuba to be part of the people and learn, like, community organizer, communist political organizer. There's also connections in here with, if I'm not mistaken, what's her name? Bernadette Dorn, who is
Kabuki Theater says it. Kabuki Theater says they don't even hide it anymore.
No, and she was on the list to be Biden's vice president.
Really?
It was between her and Harris.
Oh, wow. So I guess that would have really been blatant.
Well, the Biden people, they wanted Karen Bass because Karen Bass was not, she was not politically aggressive, right? She wasn't ambitious. Like, she didn't.
What'd she do before she became mayor?
She was, I believe, a congresswoman from California. So okay. she was a congresswoman in D.C.
So she's an established California leftist politician.
Absolutely. And so the Bidens wanted her because she wasn't as ambitious as Kamala. She would be content to just play the role of vice president, but it would check that box.
Ridiculous.
But this whole stuff with Cuba came up, and people started to talk about it as her name was being bandied about as a candidate. And so the Biden people had to walk away from it. And they went with Harris.
Somebody asked the questions. Remember Justin and Pierre Trudeau's connection with Cuba? Well, it's worse than that. Pierre Trudeau is the offspring of Fidel Castro.
Justin Castro is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Justin Trudeau.
Trudeau is the offspring
of Castro. Yeah.
Castro.
Yeah. So, man, it's a weird world. It's a really weird world. And so you have this woman, right, in LA, and Cuban connection, communist. You got the president of Mexico.
You got Trump.
All this Cuban communist.
Yeah, you got the
background.
perfect Hegelian theater, stage theater. It's just a theater that they created.
So basically, like Karen Bass was kind of letting all this shit happen. And granted, it's a small area of Los Angeles. It's not the entire area. And then she basically Karen Bass placed herself in charge of the entire thing when it happened. And then it was like 24, maybe 48 hours later, it's like, no, Karen, you're not in charge anymore. Somebody in the police department, I think it might have been the chief of police, said, we've got this, right? Like they kind of, I don't know how they did it, because they have to answer to the mayor. But 24 hours later, she's like handing it over, or 48 hours, she's handing it over now to the police. But, they should have had a freaking curfew on day 2 instead of waiting, 5 days to get there?
I don't know what's going on there now. Of course, tomorrow is a big day. June 1st, they've got rallies all over the country.
Right.
So I don't know if LA is going to re-erupt again, but it seemed to kind of put the genie back in the bottle temporarily.
Well, I think the curfew was a step in the right direction. But they've had demonstrations ongoing all around the country. I was watching stuff from Dallas, Houston. So tomorrow, I guess it's supposed to be lit.
Well, I would offer the theory that you're going to have pushback. If you're going to try to extract 21 million illegals and send them back to wherever they came from, you're going to get a lot of pushback. You don't really need organized leftists for that. You don't need a lot of George Soros money. It's going to happen organically. There's talk of these, and I don't know if it's true or not, but there's talk of the ICE showing up at people's graduation ceremonies to card people, showing up at their place of work. Again, I don't know what the truth is of some of these stories.
We don't know what the truth is.
No.
Here's the other thing too. Like ICE do whatever your feelings about ICE, they have to operate within certain bounds. So if they're going into, say, Los Angeles, they have to notify Karen Bass, the chief of police, the sheriff.
Human rights issues.
No, they just have to. They have to let the local government and police know that they're coming, right? And so, do you think that Karen Bass is just going to say, "Okay, we're here to fully cooperate with you. Just let us know," and just keep her fucking mouth shut?
Nope.
No.
They're
going to leak that out.
Right.
So
try to obstruct them because you got a very big, particularly Hispanic population, also Asians.
The Asians are not the ones that are like little Japan. Did you see the video of these assholes ransacking the sushi restaurant?
No.
Oh, horrible.
But I know the Hispanics have really gotten a big toehold in Los Angeles and Compton and places like that. Really big.
To your point, like the demographics of Compton are fascinating because up until I think like the late 50s, Compton was primarily white.
Yeah, that's where my dad grew up when they moved to California.
It was people from the Midwest.
Yeah, the Dust Bowl.
The Dust Bowlers.
Yep.
Yeah, places like Compton and Downey and like those areas. And so they show up there and eventually they wind up moving up, right? Which is part of what America does.
Well, the first wave came in was black, and that was the World War II to work in the factories. They became dominant for part of the post-war period, and then Hispanics just kind of came swarming in, and now
Compton's almost all Hispanic now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is like the Compton story is like the demographic sort of face of America through time. Yeah, interesting. So this is what I'm trying to do here is show that this is the left side of the pincer, right? Claudia Sheinbaum, she has all the bona fides of essentially being a Bolshevik communist Jew, right? And then on the other side, you have Israel, hardcore, your Alex Karp guy, order by any means necessary. We're going to be the hardcore right
problem, reaction, solution.
But it's also the pincer, right?
Pincer, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. So we're caught in the middle.
Yeah,
we're caught in the middle
because it just doesn't ever seem to be any kind of reasonable people in the middle running the show.
And here's the ironic rub. Like you and I know for a fact both agree that what's going on in Gaza is more than a shit show. It is a tragedy, absolute tragedy, right? Well, guess who identifies with our point of view on that?
Karen Bass.
Absolutely. It's that side that identifies with that.
That's liberation. That's liberation theology.
Right. So it's like, okay,
liberation theology shouldn't dominate that issue. I mean, it should be some middle ground somewhere of reasonable people that just oppose genocide. And you don't want that movement to be captured by a bunch of liberation types.
Well,
but that's how it works. Then you get the Hegelian dialectic. And I don't quite understand it. I mean, I'm kind of mystified by it. How they get so organized around this left-right dialectic and Trojan horse shit but it's just it all comes to infiltration.
Because I think that there are people who are deeply vested in either parts of these ideologies, particularly economically. So Christy Walton, have you heard this thing about her?
No. So
Christy Walton has taken out these full-page ads.
Sam Walton's daughter. Yeah, okay.
No, it's not Sam Walton's daughter.
Granddaughter?
No, I'll get there in a second.
Okay.
So Christy Walton came out with this like support of this whole no kings thing. Here, this is Walmart, and Christy Walton behind this no kings thing. So let's I'm going to play this. So what they're trying to say is don't boycott us. That's what they're trying to say. But here, so Christy Walton, let me see if I can find this. I'll give you a bird's eye view of her. She inherited the money of John Walton, who was the son of the Walton family empire, who died in a light plane accident. So that's Christy Walton. She's 76. She's an Aquarian. Looks like she was Miss Florida at one point. Her maiden name is Tallant, Tallant. And in June 2005, her husband died in a home-built ultralight plane crash. Why the fuck, if you had all that money, why would you risk your life in flying around in a home-built airlight? I don't know, man. It's weird. Making her the main heir.
Maybe she talked him into it.
Well, yeah. Why don't you try this new gas I found?
Get out of the house, honey.
So he was worth $18.2 billion. Forbes listed Christy Walton as the richest woman in the world for several years. Her net worth was estimated to $41.7 billion in March 2050, the bulk of which came from her shares in Walmart.
So has she done anything good with it at all? That's the ultimate question.
No. I mean, here we go. Philanthropy, nonprofits are the Philanthropy Roundtable, Museum, the Zoo, the Mingay, the International Museum,
University of Arkansas.
Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Well, she's all in on this. She backed the Lincoln Project, super anti-Trump super PAC, 20 grand, 10 grand, and backing No King's Day. So she's worth about 240. Oh, that's the Walton family, $240 billion. So she's got some dough to burn, right?
I mean, I'm not going to condemn somebody for being politically active, anti-Trump. That's just not my thing. So.
Well, no, I understand that, but ultimately it becomes anti-American because of what she's backing. It depends on what she's backing.
Yeah.
Right. So she's backing an insurrection. So if she was going to back something anti-Trump that wasn't going to lead to, I would hope it doesn't lead to violence. But
I think I kind of read the platform of the June 14th movement.
Yeah.
And it has some sketchy things in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there are other people involved.
But again, it's the whole conversation we're having. It's just extremists.
Right. Right. So yeah, that's how the money comes in. That's how these people get funded. A lot of this stuff came through USAID, which Doge found out. And
they get extremist politicians running.
Well, this guy Bill McKibben, who started off as a climate change guy. One of his foundation, his group, is one of the main groups behind this No King thing. And I looked at their financials. They've got $44 million in assets. They make about $39 million per year through just donations and grant money. And then they redistribute that, 35 million of that out. And when you look at who the donors are, your typical suspects, George Soros, Tides, Rockefeller, blah, 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 blah. And that's just one group, right? That's just one group that has significant resources. And then you have Christie. So there's a shit ton of money that's flowing through this direction to keep these people. A lot of these people, by the way, get paid. You know that, right?
Yeah, right. They're like NGOs, exactly.
Yeah, the protesters get paid.
So it's a entrenched group that wants to keep these illegals in the country, doesn't want any kind of due process to extract them. But on the other hand, there's so many of them that it's going to be almost an impossible task. How do you do it humanely? How do you do it respecting people's human rights without getting backlash and pushback? And I don't think you can. I think that you've kind of lost the country.
Well, that's where it takes us right back to the beginning with Alex Karp.
No, and that's not the solution, is that put him in charge of it. He's the last guy I want dealing with this problem. And I want Laura Loomer advising everybody don't you want Palantir now? No, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Because I'll be a dead man under that regime. I'll be like the Cheka. They'll take guys like me down to a basement and shoot me in the back of the head. I'm convinced of that.
Right. Well,
and Alan Karp has pretty much said it with his own words.
Alex Karp, yeah. Yeah, it starts off like, hey, we'll go after all those nasty radicals that want to ruin America and make your life horrible. It starts there, but likely doesn't end there.
Well, even among the illegals, there's people that are functioning working people. There's people the idea that people just came over the border in the last 2 years and flooded the country. It's somewhat truth. There's a lot of illegals that have been here for a long time. They just haven't really done it properly. Yeah. And they've gotten established. They have friends. They have families. They're part of the community. Now, I have to admit, I haven't really lived in the United States for a long time, so I'm not experiencing what you might be experiencing in Texas. The conversation that we had when we came on the show.
Texas is different than California. Like the Mexican population in Texas.
Established. Yeah.
It's established, and they identify as themselves as Texans and Americans. It's very different. It's a very, very different sort of, kind of an assimilation of culture.
But what percentage of people in Texas now, because people have been coming in the last 20 years, you think are illegal? Is there any kind of numbers on that?
I don't know. Where
are the illegals really stacked up? They're stacked up in certain cities.
I think they're stacked up in California, because California has probably the most opportunity for them to make money, right? Like, they can make money in Texas, don't get me wrong, but you've got the whole Central Valley in California, which for a long time has been the the place where migrants would show up and pick strawberries or whatever, right? Yeah. And it's extremely close to the border.
I mean, I saw a lot. When I was visiting my son in Maryland, I couldn't believe how many Hispanics there were there. They're everywhere.
Oh, it's I remember one time when my son was really young. He might have been maybe 3 years old, and we took him to the Santa Cruz Beach and Boardwalk, which I used to go to when I was young. Like, I grew up in San Jose, and we went there one day, and I was just blown away by how many Mexican families were there. Like, they comprised about 80% of the people at the park. I'm like, it was the first time in my life where the scales kind of fell away from my eyes. Like, oh my God, our world is changing.
Yeah, there's a Netflix on about the Astro Park disaster. You remember when Travis Scott
Oh yeah.
The performance that just turned into a complete disaster because of poor planning and overselling of tickets.
Right.
And I was observing the crowd, and oh my God, it was just 80 to 90% Hispanic. And then maybe the rest were black, and no whites at all.
Well, that was in Houston, and
yeah,
and Hispanics make up a huge demographic in that area. So the other thing too is, like, when you cross the border in Texas, it's a haul to get somewhere, right? Like, unless you're crossing in El Paso. But if you cross the border in Texas, it's a real haul to get. When you cross the border in California, you're in fucking San Diego, basically. Right. So that's why I think there's a bit of a disparate demographic difference. But, clearly there's been a shit ton that have come through the Mexican border, the Texas border in the last 4 years.
You're going to have a hard time getting them out. You really are. There's just not
and here's what's happened. Like, technology in a lot of ways has created the ability to kind of enclave in a way that it's never done before. So I shared this with you earlier before we started the show. So yesterday, when I came here I'm in Kansas City right now. So when I got here, I decided to take the Uber instead of renting a car to where I'm staying. And the driver who picked me up was a guy named Angel. He had a brand new Toyota Tacoma, and he took me to where I needed to go. He barely spoke English. And all the directions from the GPS were in Spanish for him. And so what's happened with technology is it's created sort of this interface where when people come to this country, they don't have to learn the language. Like, everything, if they're going from one place to another, like, if you wanted to, it doesn't have to be Spanish. Let's say you were Hmong. There's probably a Hmong setting somewhere in that GPS, right? And before, when you came to a country, part of the assimilation process was learning the language, right? You learn the language, and then you begin to assimilate, and language also converts into ideas. And sometimes that's not always a good thing. But the other point that I brought up, which you heard, so I go to this little market right up the road here. It's literally a Mexican market, carniceria, groceria, and I walk up to the young gal, and I said, "Hey, do you have any beer here? I wanted to get a beer." And she says, no habla inglés. She's maybe 16 years old, right? But she's working there. She doesn't speak English. I come back, I buy a few things, and I pay for my groceries in cash. And she can't even do the math in her head. She has to get out a calculator because she has to figure out how much change she gives me. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy, the world that we've created. We've created the world of these enclaves.
Well, in passing, the Uber drivers here in Prague are largely Central Asians, Ukrainians, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, some from the Middle East, and they all speak English. They don't speak Czech.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like yeah.
I mean, I love them. I love the Uber drivers here because they speak English mostly.
Yeah.
The Czechs don't speak English, the older Czechs. Young Czechs do, but you don't really find a 25-year-old driving an Uber very often, Czechs.
Right.
So it's just actually, for me, a great service, especially since I don't speak Czech.
Right. Come on now. You've been there too long.
I'm really a strange outlier in this world.
Well, it looks like we've gone over this thing pretty well here. Is there anything else you want to bring to the table?
No, I can end it at that because if you keep going off on stories like I just told, the show will really be going downhill. So that's good.
Let's leave people with some chuckles and laughs there. It's always a good way to end. All right, so we'll see in about a month, and we'll find out just how swift and brutal the retaliation is.
Yeah, we'll be taking a look at some of the film, like what we just saw, looking for sus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Russ. Stay healthy, my friend. Be well. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
All right. That was the great Russ Winter, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation of the Friday Firecast. If you do, hit the like and subscribe. And if you feel like it, you can leave me a cup of coffee. Since I've been demonetized on YouTube for quite a long time, it is a way for people to donate to the show if you do enjoy the content. I will be back on Sunday night, and we'll be doing some Sunday Night Astro Live. I got Jupiter and Cancer, and we're gonna make that the centerpiece of Sunday night show, and then we'll catch up with some of this other stuff as well. All right, thank you for being here. Appreciate your presence, mods. Thank you very much. Take good care of yourselves. Treat each other well. God bless. Love you all. Robert Phoenix signing off.